Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kuzma. Before we get started with today's guest, and I have a very special guest, by the way, this is something totally different that it's unexplored territory even for myself. But I want to remind everyone that StubHub is an official partner of Steel City Underground. If you're still looking for seats, just like I am for the Steelers home opener coming up just in a few short weeks, head on over to steelcityunderground.com/tickets to pick up and purchase your seats, and there will also be some special offers coming up also on that page, so keep an eye out for it from our sponsors. So without further ado, I wanted to welcome our guest for today. He is the Director of Operations with MBK Sports, which is a sports agency based in New York City, the Big Apple. Marc Grelsamer. Marc, how are you doing today?
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate this. I'm doing great.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. And just to give the listeners some background, about as much as I could say with Marc and the agency that he works with MBK, they do represent, well, I guess you guys represent players from all different sports, but we initially hooked up because you represent some Pittsburgh Steelers. And I got some background on what it was that you do, and then there's even more background with one of the licensed agents that hopefully we'll have on the show here in the near future because guys are very, very busy. But I wanted to get some background on the whole sports agency type thing because it was something that I'm sure you're going to wow me just as much as the listeners because I have very little knowledge of this. But before we even get into that, how did you get started in the whole wanting to become a sports agent or working with a sports agency?
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's a big question, that's for sure. And, yeah, just to kind of reiterate what you were mentioning, we do represent Sean Davis. He's one of the starting safeties for the Steelers, so that's how we did initially get in contact. But for me, I mean, I got lucky in that coming out of college, I was able to land this job as an agent assistant, and it started the summer before where I interned at an insurance agency that specifically handles and works with active NFL clients. And so with my internship there, he was able to put me in contact with my current boss and president, Eugene Lee, who founded MBK Sports. And I interviewed, I did my due diligence that way, did a little work for him when I was a senior in college, just doing some basic recruiting and kind of gathering some information for him that helped his life, make his life a little bit easier, and started as an agent assistant. And so that was last July, and I would liken that to being a glorified intern. It wasn't anything like getting coffee, but a lot of the nitty gritty work of day-to-day tasks, but with some, definitely putting my toe in the water, and getting a feel for the industry. And then in February, I was promoted to the Director of Operations, and that's in my current role ever since.
Yeah, I was going to say, too, was this something like you ever thought of maybe, a lot of, when I grew up, when I was younger and wanting to grow up, I wanted to be a fireman, for example, and I wanted to like draw cartoons. I didn't think I would get into all of the, especially even this conversation, looking back on it when I was younger. Is it something that you were inspired to do, that you wanted to work with athletes, work with sports, or just something you kind of fell into?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been, I think I have a similar story to a lot of guys in that I always wanted to be an athlete, whether it was a baseball player when I was growing up or basketball. I actually went to a school that didn't have a football team growing up here in New York City, so we just didn't have the space. But I always wanted to kind of, be involved with this. And I love helping people and love giving back to guys that have worked their ass off. I don't know if I can say that, but they've worked their butt off to get to where they are. And it's just an awesome time. I mean, for me to have a close relationship with these guys who really trust me with a lot of their day-to-day lives and expenses. And it is a dream come true in many ways. I'm really appreciative of my position here.
And that's something that I wanted to dig into too, because you just alluded to it a little bit. And yes, we are a PG show, so that one will slide. But
My apologies. I'm sorry.
We try and stay away from some of it because we know we never know who has sensitive ears that are listening. It might be we might have mom, maybe even mom or dad listening to some Steelers talk in the car with the little one in the back, because I certainly do. And everything there is like a tape recorder. You wouldn't believe the things that my soon-to-be 4-year-old I
can only imagine.
Oh my goodness! I got a story about that. Just my sister-in-law works at this one place we went to eat the other day, and she decided to take care of our table. And my little one's sitting there, and she goes, "Yeah, I told you that 3 times." I said, "Oh, thank God it's somebody that's like her aunt, as opposed to just some random stranger as a server." So you had to let her know that was not acceptable. So but explain what it is, because I don't want to have a slip of the tongue here and say like you're kind of in an apprentice type role, but the difference between having you on the show today and explaining your role within this agency is a little bit different than the guys that are maybe representing the athletes outright. Let's just say, for example, somebody going and representing one of the Steelers with the Steelers organization, having meetings with ownership and the front office.
Yeah, so I'll do my best to differentiate and try not to step on anyone's toes and demean anyone's role, because there's certainly everybody definitely has a role, and they play it the best. That's not the best quote, but everybody has a role. And for me, my main role would be helping with our clients in their day-to-day lives, and whether that's getting massages or getting their car serviced, or just making sure that I can take care of any little task, so their focus is always 100% football and performing at their best. Now, that could be said for a lot of people in this agency, because the agents are certainly focused on making sure that the clients are happy and always have everything that they always need. But for me, between the client management aspect and then the recruiting and breaking down film and helping our agents kind of determine who to go after, that would be another hat that I wear, and that I really help with the recruitment, and I help with the narrowing down of who we want to go after. And that's not just me solely. I mean, there's other factors and other agents that definitely have a stronger say than I do on who we want to go after. But both client-facing and executive-facing, that's kind of those are the areas that I cover. Hope that was clear enough. It's definitely a harder question to answer than I probably made it sound out.
No, that's quite all right. And just to give some background too to everyone listening in today, one of the things me and Marc spoke about off the air was, and this will even be true as we go forward, there's certain things that would be unprofessional as far as between different agencies, and then even persons working within the same agency, that we can't necessarily just go out and be like, hey, we're going to talk about so-and-so's contract, or this is what some things are private, and some things just aren't, what do you want to say? I don't want to say politically correct, but that seems like the word that gets thrown around so much that we're kind of almost intentionally vague. So it does sound like there was a word we used, and I said it was a PG show, but I didn't want to make it sound like you were doing some of the what work. The grunt work, I guess, is a good clean
grunt
word.
Work is a good pseudonym.
But I mean, it sounds like, and I hate for this to be cliche, but and you'll laugh, because I know you had to know I was going to bring up Jerry Maguire, but it does sound like a lot. It does sound a lot like you're trying to keep Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character Rod Tidwell. You're trying to keep them focused on what they're doing, instead of worrying about, hey, you know what, so and so locked her keys in the car over here or something like that. It sounds like there's an awful lot of upkeep for your clients.
I don't want to make that the case, because we do our due diligence and actively trying to recruit kids that either come from good families or have really good, strong character, both on and off the field. So you talk to any of our clients, wherever they are, and anybody who ever meets them just goes, wow, that kid is amazing, or that kid really comes off as a professional. I mean, I know this is a Steelers, kind of a pro Steelers podcast, but our client, Chris Godwin in Tampa Bay, I mean, he's blowing up on Twitter, and everybody that talks to him says, wow, what a professional. Our client in Indianapolis, Nate Hairston, I got off the phone with one of the dealerships that he was working with because he just recently purchased his first car. And he just said, wow, that kid's going to be a great role model for the kids as he continues to grow in his career. So those are the types of kids types of clients that we want to go after because, then you don't have that typical, show me the money attitude, because we'll make sure that we show them the money, but we also make sure that we go after guys that have good, strong character, because that's the kind of those are the type of people you want to represent at the end of the day.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily trying to say that you had a Rod Tidwell, the character that Cuba Gooding played, but and Jerry seemed like he was very off on his own and didn't have a whole lot of help and support, but it was almost kind of like I don't know, and it escapes me the romance character that the girl that he ends up having a romantic relationship with in the movie and blah blah blah, and it becomes a sad thing. But that's kind of like you're the romancer there. It reminds me of Happy Wife, Happy Life. So it's not that the players are needy and have all of this high maintenance. I don't want to make it sound like they're all prima donnas or divas or anything. We mentioned Sean Davis. I mean, Sean Davis is a world class act in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So in that regard, it's just trying to make their life easier so they can focus just on football and everything kind of taken care of for them in that regard. And plus, it helps you guys get some brownie points as far as retaining that client, because there are athletes out there you hear all the time, well, they fired their agent and then they hired this agent, this, that, and the other thing. So it is like kind of like a service industry as well, which was something that just blew my mind. It was just outside the scope of what I think of with sports agencies.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little terrifying knowing that, clients can terminate whenever, but we really do our due diligence in trying to give our clients, I would call, first round quality representation. So that's whether you're drafted first overall or you're an undrafted free agent that's trying to make the roster. We're going to make sure we take care of you and treat you like you deserve to be treated. And I mean, even just last week, we made sure that all of our clients received care packages from Everyman Jack and another company, just to kind of show them the love and show them that we're always thinking of them and that, this is the type of client and this is the way that we think that you deserve to be treated. And that ranges from someone like Sean, who's the starting safety and was a second-round pick last year, to some of our guys who went undrafted this year. It's just all about making sure that we know, or that our clients know, that we treat them as high-round talent regardless of where they actually went.
It sounds amazing. Like, I see some of the goodie bags these guys received, and maybe it wasn't from necessarily your agency, but just seeing some of the things that were sent as care packages for some. I mean, a lot of these guys, like you take the Steelers, for example, they're away from home, they're in college dormitories, and I think it was just kind of a chuckle because I see a lot of candy bars in these kind of care packages. Reese cups, for example, or do you get any requests, or is that like something you guys kind of just put together to be nice, or do you probably know your client well enough to say, hey, this guy likes peanut M&Ms, we're going to give him some peanut M&Ms as long as it doesn't derail his diet or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that is a funny point, because you do see a lot of people like teaming up with Skittles. Like Marshawn Lynch is obviously like a big ambassador for them. I mean, for something like, let's use Sean as an example. Sean's an incredible athlete. He's always making sure that his body's in peak performance. So, during the season, he has a personal chef because he's making sure that he's getting the right nutrition and the right diet and the right amount of calories. And so, we know that with someone like Sean, yeah, he might love a Snickers bar, but if we're going to try and pair him with a company or send him a goodie bag, we're going to make sure that it's definitely, supplements and nutrition that definitely is going to help him perform on the field, even if it is a little bit of a sugar boost from a Reese's peanut butter cup.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I wanted to ask some of these guys about that too. I think I think the best kryptonite for me, even though it's high in sodium, is beef jerky, just for it to be a snack and get some protein. Yeah, and it's good too. I
think a lot of these guys are starting to subscribe to the James Harrison method of keeping your body right. I mean, as technology has improved, and it's not just in football, it's across all sports. I mean, you see it with Tom Brady or even LeBron James. These guys are spending a tremendous amount of money on their diet and their nutrition, as well as their PT and therapy in the off season to make sure that they can perform at a high level for a longer time. So if that's, if it's as simple as cutting out Reese's and Skittles and all those delicious candy bars, for some of these guys, they realize that the payoff is way worth it if they just have to stop eating some sweets for a few years.
I know, and it's amazing how easy, once you cut that sugar out of your diet. I used to be into bodybuilding a lot more hardcore when I was younger, so I could totally relate with this. And it's like you cut that out of your diet, you don't miss it whatsoever. So these guys are looking at it for fuel purposes only. And I think that's tremendous that Sean actually has a personal chef. I'm very envious, but then again, his budget, his budget allows for a lot of that too. It's like, how do these Hollywood people that, Muscle and Fitness magazine, for example, and you get one of these guys on the cover. In fact, one of them had Aaron Rodgers on the cover and his ab workout or something that was crazy, but it's because that's all they have to focus on, luckily, and then they have you guys that help take care of some of the rest. But one of the other things I found fascinating, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, was the aspect of you watch film and you do some recruitment. But before I get into that, because I think that's kind of the phase you're in right now, we discussed off the air that you have maybe your own 4 quarters of a season. If you want to briefly go through what that means.
Yeah, that's okay. So right now we're kind of in the heart of our recruitment, and it's towards the end of quarter 1 and quarter 2, I would say. And that on the one hand, all of our clients are in camps right now, so there's not a whole lot we can do in terms of client management because everything that they need is being taken care of by the team. So whether that's getting therapy after practice, getting an MRI, or just, transportation, their lives are pretty much handled right now, which is a weight off our shoulders because we can only do so much. But even then, they're busy, 7 hours out of the day. I can't just call Sean up and ask if he's free to talk. I have to actually schedule a time to speak with him now. So on that hand, in that regard, the client side of the business is pretty taken care of. On the other side, and this is something that I have some experience with, but I can't have full hands-on experience with yet, is that the agents are pretty much in the heart of their recruitment process. By now, they've reached out to the college athletes who are draft eligible next year. They've tried to make contact with them, whether that's through some relationship they have at a university, or they're able to get the recruit's number or his email address. Hopefully they've met with him once or twice to kind of get the ball rolling, to, pitch them and say, hey, this is what our agency offers, and this is what we can do for you. If you're interested, let's stay in touch. And now we're starting to gather a lot of our marketing collateral, so that way throughout the recruitment and throughout their season, we can stay abreast and up to date and make sure that we're giving them the attention that we think they want. And so now this is an interesting time period because some guys cut it off completely. I won't say who we're going after, and I won't try to mention any schools or any regions, but you have kids that'll reach out to our agents and say, hey, I appreciate all you've done for me so far, or I appreciate, reaching out and your interest. Right now, my sole focus is football, and I'm going to cut it off from now until the end of the season. There are some kids that say, hey, I appreciate it, I'm not interested. There's some guys that never get back to you. And then there are other guys that say, hey, I'm interested. This person's going to take care of it, whether it's a mom, a dad, a guardian, a grandmother, a grandfather. They'll pass off the recruitment and the decision-making off to a parent. So and hopefully you kind of gauge who's really in charge of making the decision process by this point, or as you're going through the recruitment process. But that's kind of where we're at right now, and that we're narrowing down our list. We have an idea of who's interested, who isn't, and we're starting to just make sure we have all of our collateral ready, so that way we can disseminate as much information to the recruits that will be beneficial to help them make a decision with the agency to go with.
It sounds like an awful lot, and it sounds a lot like what we do here. When we're trying to get, we speak with some current players, some former players. It's obviously how you and I hooked up for today's show as well. And we were talking about this probably even up to a month ago about doing this episode and talking about this, because it's just fascinating. Like, you'll have somebody just pop in out of nowhere after you reach out to them initially, and of course you don't want to bother the players or be a pest to them too much. You want them to focus on obviously doing well on the field, because ultimately that's how they would become your client. So I guess the selling point, the elevator pitch, is with MBK. When you approach a potential future client, one of these college athletes, what do you say to them that says, hey, this is the reason to go with us? What puts you above the rest?
Yeah, well, I think I don't want to step on any toes, but I think the pitch that a lot of our agents, because again, I'm not certified, so I'm never in these meetings. I'm never allowed to meet these guys until they become clients, because that becomes a breach of policy and rules. So I think the pitch, though, and because I hear it quite frequently, is that this is a faith and family first agency, that you are going to get the best representation. You're going to get the absolute best dedication and representation you will ever need and ever want. And that whenever you need us, when the chips are down, when everybody's turning their back on you, when times are tough, we'll be there. And then obviously when times are great and things are as good as they can be, we'll also be there to make sure that you're capitalizing on your market and capitalizing on your brand. And so that way you can take care of yourself and your family forever.
That sounds perfect, and I know there's some great. I know.
Thank you.
Really, it is, and we tease each other too. And for folks that aren't in the know, we had a pretty lengthy phone conversation just the other day talking about this. And I was like, wow, this is all fascinating and good stuff. But there are some lines that we don't want to cross, because again, there's the certain roles, and of course, like with NCAA and then with the NFL and everything, there are black and white rules, especially NCAA. You don't want to mess with the NCAA. I mean, the NCAA, they just had the kid, who was he? It was a kicker. I want to say he was somewhere down in Florida, the guy with the YouTube account, and he was just making some residuals off of that. And it's like, my personal opinion, you don't have to offer anything to this, but I just think some of it's a little silly. But I've worked with the NCAA for many years myself, and I can understand how there's some things you don't want to cross the line there, I guess, is the bottom line. So, and moving forward too, you get a body like the NCAA, the NFL, any of the other major sports leagues that you have clients in. Do you find that this is an industry that changes like every day? Does it change fast and often?
That's a good question. I mean, I want to say first and foremost, I don't know if I've had enough experience to view a lot of those changes. I'm sure a lot of the agents who have been around several years have definitely seen that, how the CBA has changed from the first draft to the second draft, or just how everything has changed in terms of, penalties. Last year we had Sean was fined with a hit on Chris Conley. And who knows, 5 years ago that hit might have gone unpenalized and he might have gone unfined, but that's just how the game is evolving. I will say that in terms of if we're looking to if we're looking to partner with a company that's either in supplementation, you have to do your due diligence and make sure it's NSF certified, because the last thing you want is your client partnering with this company. They take the protein powder, they take the protein bar, and then they show up for the game on Sunday and they test positive for an illegal substance. And then next thing you know, they either, can't play that Sunday. They could get kicked off the team because the team could have very strict regulations and policies about that. You get terminated, and that's just the absolute, then it looks like you didn't do your due diligence for your client, because you're costing yourself and you're costing the client an opportunity in the NFL. So I would say in that regard, I'm sure companies, and I would hope that other agencies who do this really do their due diligence, at least when it comes to certain aspects, to make sure that they're not putting themselves or their clients in any harm's way.
That's probably the main reason why it's so important to have a personal chef, and you're getting a lot of those nutrients and stuff naturally, because you never know what protein powder's out there on the market. All of a sudden the FDA says it's no good. The NFL, there's a trace of something or other that's in it. Like I said, the bodybuilding background, I know that all too well. There's stuff that's been just yanked off the market out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the terms and agreements list on an iTunes. You never really read the fine print. You just click agree. So you look at the back of a whey protein shake, and you just see all these things that you can't pronounce. You just go, whatever. But for guys who are in the NFL or playing at a professional level, it doesn't just have to be the NFL, obviously. They really do have to make sure that they know what's in there, or if they don't, that you know it, so that way when they drink it, they assume that it's automatically fine for them. And the thing is, when those terms change and certain substances are banned, it's not like they send out a huge memo to every person in the NFL. You have to do your due diligence and your research to make sure that all of those substances are covered, or at least make sure you check in with the agency or the company that you're working with.
It sounds very similar to something that happened with a guest we had on maybe about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. You may have heard of a tight end that used to play with the Steelers and Colts. His name was Wesley Saunders. And he explained to us when he initially came on with the Steelers, a lot of this was already covered, or it wasn't covered at the portion of which he joined the team. He was already handcuffed because he had already had something that was banned, or a banned substance in his system. So by the time he had already taken that test, and he finds out after the fact, he ends up getting suspended, I think 3-4 games, something of that nature. And then come around that something very similar happens again, and he gets his hand slapped a second time, and you get if you're especially a lower round draft pick or an undrafted guy, there's very little second chances in the NFL. I mean, as you get somebody that goes in the first round, and I don't want to name names just because I would maybe if this were a different approach for this episode, but I don't want to make it sound like you represent anyone. But there are players who were first round picks. Maybe they didn't have the best of career, and they get to bounce around. They get 3, 4, 5, 6 opportunities sometimes. They have a much longer career average than the 3.5 that's in the NFL. And you just got to hope that you're flying straight the entire time as well when it comes to anything that you're putting into your body, because you could be bounced out the door the next day. The life span is very short. They're always looking for the very next guy that can help your team win. So, Mark, I wanted to ask you one other question here before we end up wrapping, and that's saying where you are now, and I know it's a very young career and you're working on making it a longer career, but do you have any advice for anyone that would want to get into, say, the same line of work that you're in?
The best piece of advice that I can give would be to consistently follow up with the contacts that you've made, no matter how small or insignificant they might seem. And I say that because it definitely goes a long way. I mean, we've hired interns, and I'm not saying I want a plethora of inquiries to come into my inbox all of a sudden, but we've gotten a few interns in the past who reached out to us, and maybe the timing wasn't right because we just didn't have the position available, or we weren't really looking to expand. And, they appreciated the response, but they just kept following back and following up. And so that shows to us that this kid's not just looking for an introduction to the sports industry, because it's obviously a hard industry to break into, but he's definitely dedicated and he's very passionate about working with us. And that goes not just, for our agency, but that can go for any company, because if you show true interest and you show that you've done your research, that this is a fit, that shows wonders for the person who's actually ended up doing the recruiting and the hiring. So I guess that's a good piece of advice. I would hope it's a good piece of advice, because that's what I used a lot, and it definitely helped me get started. And for the few contacts that I've already made so far, if it's as simple as sending a thank you email after they spend a month training one of your clients or feeding one of your clients, they appreciate that, and then they know that you're an agency that we want to work with. I know Mark. Mark gets back to me. He respects what I do, and he follows up. And that's probably one of the better pieces of advice that I can give.
I could say that's true just from our own interaction and having dealt with maybe some different sports agencies ourselves, some of the others here with Steel City Underground as well. Whenever we're pursuing maybe someone to speak with via interview or whatever be the case, we've noticed that MBK definitely has their stuff together, and it's a breath of fresh air.
That. It's just it's a form of respect, I think, and. If I reached out to somebody, I would at least hope that they have the respect of my time, the respect for my time, to at least say, hey, appreciate it, we're not interested, or hey, sounds good, let's meet up. And then it's as simple as that. And you feel like, hey, you feel at least acknowledged in your efforts.
Exactly, and I feel the same exact way. It's like sometimes you don't even get a confirmation of, hey, did this message even get through? You don't know that it's being received, and it's just nothing feels worse than that. But that's not to downplay any of the other people that I've spoken to in your industry. There's certainly others that have it together as well. But MBK definitely stands out, and you definitely stand out on social media as well. So, Marc, why don't you tell us?
You.
Oh yeah, why don't you tell us about? Seriously, folks, for the clients that they truly do promote them an awful lot. Twitter, Instagram. I don't know if you guys had Facebook or not. Sometimes I get lost on Facebook. I have thousands of notifications each day through SCU. So tell us how we could follow MBK Sports.
Yeah, if you're interested, you can first visit our website. We're mbksports.com. Our Twitter is also just MBK Sports, and our Instagram is MBK_sports. We do our best to kind of promote creative and fun content. If you go on our Twitter, most recently we put up this video of client Aaron Peck, who is in Green Bay, and he caught a touchdown on Friday night, and we added the Macarena song to it just to kind of diversify it up a little bit to it. So we're always trying to put fun and creative stuff out there that hopefully our clients like, and we think they like because they generally repost and reshare it. So please follow us there because we're always looking for more followers.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was fantastic. There's definitely no BS. And it's definitely no BS when I say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on the Steel City Underground podcast today.
Hey, Joe, I appreciate your time. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Definitely awesome. And I just want to remind some of our fans that if you have some questions going forward on the Steelers season, don't forget to drop us a line either via email, fanmail@steelcityunderground.com, or, of course, we have the hotline. You could text or drop us a voicemail. It's 203-900-4SCU. My name's Joe Kuzma, and our guest was Marc Grelsamer, Director of Operations from MBK Sports. Until next time, folks, be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.